Welcome to Charity Champions, the podcast where we hear from inspiring leaders behind some of the UK's most impactful charities. I'm your host, Emily Formby from Charity Recruit. Today's guest is Melissa Santiago-Val, founder of So Positive, a creative health charity that was born in lockdown and has blossomed into a lifeline for people across Cambridge. Through sewing, upcycling and mending, So Positive helps people reduce social isolation, improve mental health and connect with others in a meaningful way. From its grassroots beginning to award-winning nominations and impactful collaborations, Melissa's story is one of courage, creativity and community, with a strong message for anyone in the charity sector. You don't need to do it alone. So welcome, Melissa. It's lovely to have you here.
Hi, Emily. Thanks so much for having me on. That was a lovely intro. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Oh, thank you. Well, it's great to have you with us today, and I'm really keen to bring your story to our listeners. So let's rewind to the beginning of your story. I know lockdown was such a difficult time for so many people, but for you, it became the spark of something really, really powerful. Tell us about how So Positive came to life.
So back just as lockdown happened, a friend of mine who sews and is really creative just lives down the road and said, I see you've got your sewing machine out when I walk past your window. Do you fancy making some masks to try and raise a bit of money for the NHS? And I said, I don't know how to make a mask. And she said, it's okay, there's this new thing, Zoom, and we can teach you. I was like, right, okay. And well, there we go. That was the start. And
so you'd been furloughed at the time, is that right?
Yeah, I'd been furloughed. And actually, I have lived experience of anxiety and depression, and I was actually not in the greatest way. And actually having something that I could just sort of have a purpose about was really, really helpful. And I could see that immediately. I was like, great, this is good. I need to be able to do this. I need to be able to do something for positive for my own mental health, and it's really useful, and it might raise a bit of money for the NHS. So we started using our own fabric stash. Anybody that sews knows that fabric is a separate hobby, and we had quite a lot. So between us, we started just using our own stash, and obviously very quickly that really snowballed, and we needed to find other people locally who could help. So I went onto a sort of village Zoom for their sort of stitching group, which I didn't even know existed, and got a few volunteers, and it spiraled really. I think we raised £2,500 in the first week.
In the first week?
Yeah, it was massive.
Oh, wow.
It was really massive. And then we started getting amazing fabric donations from all over the country. People sending us fabric, and local businesses giving us fabric. We had an amazing company that used to make wraps, they're called BB wraps, and they were like with wax, and sadly they'd gone out of business, and they had loads of fabric, so they gave us all of that to use. And actually we had like some celebrity endorsements from Craig Revel Horwood, and people to try and encourage people to wear masks, which was really lovely. And we did little things like we tried to make masks that were accessible for people. So we had some with a screen, so that if you were deaf and you needed to lip read, that was a real big issue. So yeah, we tried all sorts of different things as well, which was quite fun. But one of the biggest things that we did that was so helpful in setting this up is developing a network of people wanting to get involved and volunteer, not just in sewing. They were doing the washing, they were getting fabric, they were taking things to people. I was like, right, okay. It wasn't just the volunteers, it was also the fact that we were donating masks to other community groups across the city whose beneficiaries and participants couldn't get hold of masks. It was really difficult. If you're homeless, where are you going to go for masks? You can't afford to buy them, the disposable ones. And also ours were washable, and obviously that's a big issue with textile waste. And we could see that obviously it wasn't the biggest issue in lockdown at all, but it was an issue. It's starting to become one. So by doing that and using ones that were washable, it meant that charitable services could come up with a solution that worked for more people, really. So I started making those connections with charities, but I've also been a trustee and a volunteer and a recipient of various charitable services myself. So I was in there anyway in some ways, but yeah, I made loads of different connections with people. Amazing. And we ended up raising, I think, £40,000, and we made 14,000 masks.
Wow,
Not just
really?
a lot of volunteers. Yeah.
How many volunteers were on that project then? If you were making 14,000 masks, that's a lot of sewing, isn't it?
It is, and I mean, there were 2 or 3 volunteers that were just incredible. They were like photocopiers. They were just amazing.
Really?
But we had about 50 people volunteering all in all over that whole year,
Wow.
making different, doing things, cutting up fabric. Some people didn't sew at all; they just ironed fabric for us, and they cut it into squares and things like that. And
that's incredible. So, what a great story. And so many people, I think, struggled at that time to find a purpose. What a great way to, feel like you're adding value and giving back to people. So what was it, or at what point was it that you realised this could become more than just a one-off project?
I think during that year, I could see the strength and the different ways that communities were being strengthened by it. And I thought, I think I might actually be made redundant. Could I look at this as an opportunity to see if this could be made into something else? Now, what do I take that into? Do I take it into a social enterprise, a charity, a business? And when lockdown was ending, I went camping, and I was literally in a tent in Norfolk, and I've got photos of me sitting outside looking at how to set up a charity and looking at the government website, and trying to fill in forms about setting up a CIO. And I mean, having sort of, I have worked in the sector, and I've obviously been a volunteer in the trustee, and I thought, oh, how hard can it be?
I'm sure you learned a lot from there.
Yeah, I've learned a lot from that. Yeah. But no, it was amazing. So that's where I started really looking into what structure do we want, what governance would work for this, and what would be the most benefit to our communities. And I decided that being a CIO, a charitable incorporated organisation, was the way forward. It was a more modern interpretation of the registered charity. And we've got a real issue in Cambridge of being a city of two halves, really, so that the city's wealth disparity is really huge, and the life expectancy between the top earners and the bottom earners is a difference of 10 years. So, you think of Cambridge, and I've lived here all my life. I'm actually from here. It is a really amazing city. I absolutely love it. But there's a lot about it that's really got a lot of issues, a lot of problems. People who don't access that part of Cambridge don't even know about it. And it's how do we meet the needs of those people to help them in terms of their creative health, to engage with health in a better way. A lot of people that we deal with, and a lot of small charities are dealing with, it's very grassroots, it's very direct, it's working with people that really have fallen between the gaps, aren't accessing statutory services, and are finding it very difficult. So I knew that when I set this up, our service provision had to look different to that. So even though I believe, as a person who has long-term health conditions myself, I have my own ways of managing those, and they very much include, the choices that I've made in how I spend my spare time or whatever. And those are all different for all of us, aren't they? So, you mentioned you do sport. I'm not very sporty anymore because of my, my health. So what other things can I do that can support my health whilst being healthy? So I could see those things had a real effect, not just on me, but on others. And that's sort of, it all built on that, really. And I think during COVID, we all thought a lot about our mental health, thank goodness.
100%, yeah.
Could see a lot of people really struggling, and a lot of our volunteers who were saying, this has just given me such a sense of purpose, and I haven't really volunteered before, and now I've got a way of being involved in my community, and it was really, really, really lovely.
That's brilliant. So when you sat in your tent in Norfolk and you're thinking about, the direction that you want to take this, and you've agreed with yourself the structure that you might take, what was the offering at that stage? What issues are you trying to solve, and how were you going about tackling that?
Well, I think when I first set it up, I obviously looked at the vast amount of information on how to set up a charity, and I was a bit overwhelmed. And I looked at the charitable objects, and I thought that mental health was one that would be the one. But I didn't really I mean, looking back, I just didn't really have enough knowledge. So actually, we were rejected the first time we went to the Charity Commission because we'd gone for the mental health objects. Now, the thing is, we're not a crisis mental health service. So we're tackling social isolation, of which mental health is a big factor. So, mental health is a factor of social isolation and can cause that. So it is about working out what your charitable objects are, what are the issues you're trying to solve, and for us the social isolation element of that is what we are. That's what we're doing, through bringing people together, through stitching communities together.
I'm with you. So what would you say the biggest hurdles that you faced have been in that sort of incorporation stage?
I mean, that is a lot, just getting through the sort of Charity Commission guidance. And I would say, if you can, obviously join your CVS. I did then get support from CVS. I remember being on a Zoom with them from my tent in Norfolk, and I joined like the Cambridge Mental Health Network, and I started sort of joining all these little things, thinking, oh, I don't know, I'm going to end up going to a lot of meetings, which I still do. But you know what? They are so helpful, and I've found the sector to be supportive and welcoming, and just amazing in a way that I've worked in the corporate sector, the charitable sector, and education, and this has just been amazing. I get other CEOs that I will phone up and go, I'm having a zero nightmare. Can you help? And they're like, okay.
I think that peer-to-peer networking is really vital, isn't it, for a lot of charity CEOs, or indeed other people that are operating within the charity and not-for-profit sector. I think having someone to share experiences with and talk through is a really important thing.
It's vital. I mean, this is our head office, as in it's in my garden. We are tiny, and I'm often working on my own. I mean, if I'm running services, amazing. I'm with participants, I'm with volunteers, or I'm with trustees. That's very different. But quite a lot of the day to day, I'm just, battling through, accounts, monitoring stuff on my own. And sometimes I've joined things like the With Purpose Network in Cambridge, and that's about bringing businesses and different charities together. And once every couple of months we go and share office space at a business in Cambridge.
Oh,
and it's brilliant
nice.
because it means all the different charities get together, but also the businesses are together as well. So and you get that. And actually, they've got nice coffee machines, they have lovely facilities. It's not something we generally have much access to. So just even being able to do that, just meeting those other people and being able to network is so important, I think.
And tell us a little bit about your participants. I know one of the things that you really emphasize is that you try to empower people. Talk me through what that looks like for you.
I mean, I think that's always been really key for me, with coming from a point of lived experience, that co-production. And actually, when I worked in a charity before, it was a large disability charity, and back in the early 2000s, and they were always very much leading from the social model of disability, and I really believed in that even then. And so I think for me, it was about self-referral, it was about empowerment and people having their own voices about how they want services to be run, and helping us to, put those services together. It's not us saying, right, we're going to do this sewing group, we're going to do that. We tried lots of different things, and we were able to do pilot programs. And, then when we first started getting money for the National Lottery, it was a really big deal. The first year we got that was amazing, but we did that with another charity. So that was our first sort of collaboration. And I think doing that, it gives your funder the trust that you've got support in delivering something. But you're also you're also getting the support that you need to make sure that you're delivering correctly, and understand the governance, you understand everything. So that is hugely important, I think.
Absolutely. So tell us about Men's Hems.
Oh, it's brilliant. I love it. It's such a great program. There is such a huge need, isn't there? We all know mental health and men's health particularly has been a really big sort of issue in the news in the last year for everybody. But I think with sewing and creativity, it's not necessarily something that I don't know why, because actually it's a non-gendered activity completely. And a lot of our top fashion designers and tailors are men, and only need to say Patrick Grant as well, but it's not really about that. And that's not what So Positive is about. So Positive is about using that creativity to help your mental health. And there's a lot of men who do want to have those conversations. They want to have that space to do it, but there aren't many creative spaces. Now, there's absolutely fantastic charities like, Men's Sheds, Andy's Man's Club, and they're brilliant, but they're a specific thing, and we're wanting to offer men a creative arm of that sort of thing. So and actually, we've been running that through CPSL Mind funding, which was commissioned by Cambridgeshire County Council since January. And it was a one-off service through the Good Life Fund Plus, which has been amazing because it's enabled us to really grow the very beginnings of a collaboration that we'd started with CPSL Mind. And it's really let us grow that really through that funding. We've just sort of got to understand each other and work together. And we've been able to deliver something that isn't their niche. And we've been able to get to people that they haven't been able to get to. But we wouldn't have been able to do that without their funding.
So just give us a little bit of background as to what Men's Hems is, and then we can talk around that collaboration with Mind.
So it's a drop-in group for men who are facing mental health challenges. It's a weekly drop-in. Once you're registered and we've checked that you're meeting our sort of overall criteria, you just come along when you like. And we have a tutor called Colin, and we've got male volunteers who come every week and they support the group. We've got about between 8 and 12 guys that come every week. We've got 28 people who've registered so far. And it's just been brilliant. We asked them what they want to do, but we've had all sorts of like specialist volunteers as well. So we had a guy called Andy who came right at the start, and he did in 3 weeks, the guys made like Peaky Blinder caps from scraps of donated wool fabrics. So
that's brilliant.
It was brilliant. So yeah, learning basic sewing skills. So at the moment, they're making a shirt from upcycled duvets. So there's a lot of there, but it's okay if you get it wrong. And I think that's very much part of our ethos. It's about embracing imperfection and thinking it's the process, it's not just the result. The process is really important to our mental health. We know that there are studies showing that creativity and crafting and sewing is really important for our brain health, because you're learning a new skill, but also you're activating a part of your brain that is creative flow, which is known for obviously being very good for your relaxation. So actually, if you're doing a repetitive activity like borrow or sashiko stitching, it's absolutely wonderful. And it's also good. You can't be necessarily on a screen when you're doing that, and you get that break from that as well. So there are lots of practical benefits of doing it, but you're also learning a new skill, you're upcycling, you're mending something, you're repairing, but not just your clothes. It's like repairing yourself and looking at that, embracing imperfection in what you are as a person as well as your clothes.
That's amazing. You're obviously so passionate about it, and I'm sure that helps, doesn't it, when all the volunteers are around to share that passion with you.
Amazing.
Just talk us through that collaboration then with CPSL Mind. How did that come about?
Well, funnily enough, when I was doing the mask project, which was called Community Masks for NHS, I found that CPSL Mind did something called the Good Life Fund. So I applied for that as a community group. So if you're not a charity, you can apply for a small amount of funding, which just allowed us to buy a pop-up banner to take to events and things like that, and just tell people about it and just have some funding to go to those sorts of things. And you know what, that was just a tiny little door that I went through and thought, oh gosh, I'd really, really love to work with CPSL Mind, because they're our hub of mental health, but it's not easy to just get in there and do that. So I also really believed when I set this charity up, I'd heard about social prescribing, and it was something I thought was a really good model. But the problem with social prescribing is that there isn't any funding that comes from the NHS for social prescribing. So obviously we have to find our own funding, and it is a real problem, because the NHS are really keen to socially prescribed to community groups, but they're not. There just isn't that funding there, so it is quite tricky. And I think that's going to be a big challenge within the new, NHS plan. So we started doing that, and then because of the NHS thing, I wanted to find ways to improve those links. And there came up an opportunity to be part of the Mental Health, Learning Disability and Autism Partnership collaboration with the NHS and the VCSE sector. So I applied to be on that panel with our sort of ICS. There's so many acronyms in the NHS, but anyway, with the NHS. And that was also facilitated through CPSL Mind. So that was another tick.
Yeah.
And then I was on this panel and we would meet regularly, and just through that I developed those relationships with the people in CPSL Mind. So it just started work. It's a lot of work,
Yeah.
You've got to put in that time and understand each other's organizations. And then I did get in touch with Ash, and I said I'd got this idea about men's hems, and he was like, oh, that's so good, that's brilliant. So I talked to them about it, and then I found out about the Good Life Fund Plus that was coming out, which was a one-off pot for a year. So I'm not sure. There might be 11 charities. I could be wrong, but there are quite a few other charities that have received it, and we were the first to be awarded it, which was amazing. And we've been running since January. And so since then, we've taken the partnership even further. So we do a lot of joint press together. So this week we're out in the Charity Times about an article about collaboration, which is fabulous.
That's brilliant.
Yeah, thank you. We're going to be I'm going to be talking at their World Mental Health Day event about the Good Life Fund Plus, which is the fund that funded us. It's their 6th birthday, I think. So they're going to be talking about that, and I'll be talking there.
Oh, what a great opportunity. That'll be great.
It's brilliant. And then Ash and I, so Ash, who couldn't be here today, he is the CEO of CPSL Mind, and together we're also doing a couple of other events. So with our local authority, Cambridge City Council, they have the community engagement team are doing an event called Engaged, and they do that twice a year. And the next one coming up is about creative health inequalities, it's about health inequalities. So we're going to do one together about collaboration and that as well. So we're doing that together. So we find these opportunities, and actually they did a business networking event last Mental Health Day, and we took part in that. It was punting on the cam, having conversations with businesses about mental health and collaboration. So we did that with them. So it was just brilliant. Having those opportunities has meant so much to us as a really small charity, and it's given me confidence, that I could do something like this. I wouldn't have done this a year ago.
It just shows, doesn't it, how having someone in your corner and that support network really does help you push on to do things that perhaps are a little bit outside of your comfort zone. Actually, I read the article in the Charity Times, and what really stuck with me was you'd said about the collaboration. It's not just about funding or logos, it's about that trust and time and relationship building side of things. And I think that's really critical, isn't it, for a lot of organisations, that building those partnerships, it doesn't happen overnight, and you've really got to put the work in. But if you've got the same goals and working in the same direction, it just helps.
Yeah. And I think, obviously from our perspective, CPSL Mind are a really, big charity in our region, but they're also part of a federation. So they've got a lot of governance and support in that way. But it's not just the bigger charity. So we also, in that article, I mentioned that we collaborate with Red Hen. We've got loads of different collaborations, and they all bring something different to our sort of collaborative party, if you like. And, Ash spoke at our AGM this year. Rachel from Red Hen spoke at our AGM last year. And in fact, when Red Hen had an amazing fundraising opportunity in May this year at the Cambridge Beer Festival, so they were the Charity of the Year. And it's a really massive opportunity, but it's also a huge undertaking in people on the ground going out and doing fundraising. fundraising at the whole event, you know, whilst they're running services. So, you know, we went and volunteered to help them with shifts as well, you know, and we had like volunteers from our volunteers, also our participants, and myself. I even took my dog. So, you know, we were fundraising with them, and it was great because actually we are all really small. We haven't got huge members of staff, amounts of staff, and you know the running of the services is really important, and so you need people on the ground to just support you, and it's exhausting. So if you can help each other, you know, that's, you know, and one day, who knows, it might be us, and that would, you know, would definitely be calling in the favours.
What a great piece of advice, though, for anybody in a similar position with their charity around that collaborative piece. And, you know, bouncing ideas off one another is one thing, but actually leaning on each other for support and, you know, aligning any areas that you can along the way to make things a little bit easier. It sounds like such a simple thing, but actually can lead to much bigger things, I would think.
It can, and in fact, Sarah, who's the CEO of Red Hen, we both did the Small Charity Leaders Club together with Vic Hancock-Fowle from Fair Collective. So, you know, we went through that at the same time. So we, you know, we sometimes pop up on, you know, WhatsApp groups together, and I think it's just really good to know. And sometimes I get, you know, asked by new people coming into the sector. They've just set up a kick, and you know, I don't have a huge amount of time. No one does, but it's really important because I think, oh God, you know, the amount of people I've asked, and you've got to, you know, you want to help others as well because it's hard. I don't have an answer, unfortunately, in a, you know, in half an hour that will make change. It is hard. And are you sure you really want to do this? You know, it's probably my first question.
Yeah. So you've worked with a huge range of people over the years, from sort of isolated carers to Ukrainian refugees, and you use sewing as a way to break down those barriers, which is amazing. How do you design those experiences so that they feel welcoming and inclusive for everybody?
We try to follow a trauma-informed approach, so it's about having a consistent, safe, and reliable place to have these services. And we do partner with a business called Cambridge Design Room, so we do a lot of our services there now, and it's a really good space because it's really big. It's basically a, you know, warehouse. It's massive, so there's a lot of room, like a cafe feel to it, where you can have different tables with different activities. And I think, as I say, with the sort of co-production has been really important. So we'll do like a taster session, and we'll offer some activities to sort of suggest activities and then get feedback on those and ask people what they want. And actually, we've got a course starting on Tuesday, which is called So Practical. And we'd already done the first one, So Basic. And we got participants from who'd applied to come onto that course, but from other services as well. And we had a big taster session, and one of the things they could do was take part in a sort of co-production of that and talk about the sort of things they'd like to do for the next step. And actually, it helps us to then, you know, get resources for it. So I've phoned, well, I emailed like Tilly and the Buttons, who was on Sewing Bee a few years ago. She's got a massive company now doing patterns, making patterns, and I just emailed her and said, our participants would like to make your pajama bottoms, would you mind? You know, and she has. So fantastic. And that's because participants ask. And also we've got a WhatsApp community, which is, I mean, they're always a bit of a double-edged sword, but we've got, you know, we've got guidelines and we battle through them, and sometimes we get it right, and sometimes everyone feels a bit bombarded. So we're trying to find ways of managing all of that, really. But it's a brilliant community, and it means that people who are socially isolated and have got health issues, if they can't physically get to an event one day, or it's in the evening when they've got too much pain and they can't face coming out, they can still join us. So we had like a Sewing Bee chat every week with it on the TV, and we did that just remotely using WhatsApp. But then on the last one, we got together and we had a community supper and a party. So, you know, that sort of way of addressing that sort of idea of just people sitting in their houses and watching a TV on their own. It's much nicer if you can get people physically together, isn't it? Yeah. So yeah, I think that sort of co-production. Sorry, remind me of what you were trying to get me to say, because I've gone off track.
That's all right. We were talking about making sure that the people that you were helping felt welcomed, and you know, you providing that inclusive environment, which, you know, I think that you've covered.
Our volunteers are key to that. They're just amazing. They really are, and they come from all sorts of backgrounds, all sorts of different skills and jobs, and you know, they're just absolutely amazing people. So we'll have a tutor, but we might have 5 or 6 volunteers at a service, depending on the risk assessment and the type of people that are attending. But we're also, you know, we aren't a crisis mental health service, but we do find that the people come to us have got quite significant needs, and it's making sure that our volunteers are prepared and they've had the training that they need and the support that they need. So one of our volunteers, for example, she's not sewing with us at the moment, but she's a specialist therapist, so she's going to offer some one-to-ones, some supervision sessions with our volunteers, so that at the end of every course we can have like 6 people can come together for clinical supervision, because that is really important for boundaries for our volunteers, and also their own mental health protection when dealing with people who have got significant issues and vulnerable adults.
Yes, absolutely. That sounds like a great initiative that you've started there, because it's important, isn't it, that everybody's thought about and looked after in that process.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously that's important for our volunteers, but you know, as a sector, you know, it's also important to keep our volunteers, so that we're not just expecting them to go into a situation that's difficult and without them being supported. It's you know, it's not fair, so we wouldn't expect that.
We talked, I think, quite a bit on our last call around raising the awareness of textile waste, and you gave me some fascinating stats on that. Do you want to share that information with our listeners?
I mean, it's huge. I think it's 336,000 tonnes of textile waste in the year in the UK every year, and textile waste is like the second largest global contributor to CO2 emissions. It's just huge. And, you know, fast fashion does get a bad name, and it's for a good reason. They're producing millions of items of clothing. So if we can get people who come to our services to just consider textile change, to consider textile waste, and to consider what changes they can make themselves. You know, I think I'm going to read it out because it's quite detailed, but like repairing a hole in a wool jumper saves you 16 kilograms of CO2 emissions. That's the equivalent of leaving a light bulb on for 50 years. Wow. So actually a really relatively small action of learning how to mend a jumper is going to make a big difference. 336 tons of used clothing is discarded every year. Repairing a rip in a waterproof jacket saves 45 kilograms of CO2 of emission, the equivalent of 300 washing machine cycles.
Wow.
So if we can even like wear our clothes for longer, keep our clothes that we love, it's not about demonizing fast fashion. You know, it's about saying, if you love that dress from wherever, get it, but wear it more than 3 times. You know, wear it for a long time and love it, and mend it, put something else on it, adorn it, you know, make it sparkly when you've had enough of it, when you get bored, or swap it with someone else's clothes. You know, make different decisions around textile waste, and it has a big impact. And actually we are trying to get funding for that at the moment, to look at a tool. We do sort of a lot of crossover work with the Cambridge, with the repair cafes, and quite a lot of our volunteers also volunteer for them. So we've looked at their tools, but they don't quite work for us. We want to look at wider impacts. So yeah, we're looking to do that as well, because I think that would be a great piece of work to do.
Yeah, that sounds. If you can get the funding for that, that sounds.
I know, I'm trying.
So for other charity leaders listening, especially those running micro charities, what advice would you give at this stage? What's your one piece of advice that you would want to pass on to listeners who have perhaps been in a similar situation to you? What would that be?
I would say ask for help. Ask for help. Honestly, I really would. I have asked for help so many times, and I've always felt, if I'm honest, I've been in tears in trustee meetings. You know, it's not all roses. It's hard work, and you need to be able to be honest and say, I need help.
Yeah.
In whatever form that is. And I have had a lot of help, but I've needed it. I've had help from Akivo, CEOs in Crisis. I've had training and coaching from a level 7 coach at Cranfield. I've just had brilliant support, and I've also had like support through my CPFT because I live with depression and anxiety, and that has meant getting like sessions for counselling in the workplace when your mental health is affecting your work. I mean, it's difficult to access these things. Even as a person that runs a charity, I find it difficult. So I know how hard it is for the participants that use our services to access it. So asking for help is so important, whether you're a charity leader or you're a person accessing a service, or you're a volunteer and you need help, or or you just don't know what, just ask. I've joined a lot of networks as well, and that has helped.
Yeah, well, I think that whole sort of collaboration piece and networking piece go hand in hand, don't they? And you find yourself, before you know it, submersed in an environment where, people are there to support you. But I think it's making that first step that's always the hardest, isn't it? When you think that you need help, it's knowing where to go or who to speak to,
Yes.
because it can feel quite intimidating, can't it? And I think taking that first step is often the hardest.
But I think as a society, hopefully we're starting to have more of those conversations. I'm very happy to say, I find it easy to say that, but I'm practiced at it.
Yeah.
I will just say, I can't do that. I need your help. I'm not keen on finance. I need some help.
Yes.
I always need help with that.
Which brings us nicely to the trustee side of things. I know you'd said, you've got some really supportive trustees there. And we'd spoken earlier around the fact that you're always looking for trustees to come and work with your organisation. So if there's any of our listeners out there that have enjoyed Melissa's story and feel that they can add value to the organisation, you'd welcome the chance, I think, for a conversation, would you?
Absolutely. We've got amazing trustees. We're a small team of 5, and 2 of them have done 4 years, and they agreed to stay on for another year, but their life is, spreading outwards, so they're needing to do other things too. So we're looking to bring at least 2 trustees in, and you don't have to sew, but it helps. My trustees made me some pattern weights, so I'm really lucky.
Oh, that's lovely. Well,
it's a great way to get involved in the sector, isn't it? And we also nurture new trustees. So because we're a small charity, we do believe in people coming along who maybe haven't thought about being a trustee before, if they've got skills that they can offer that they've had in the business world. It's really a great way to get involved.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a really good way to find out what the sector's all about, and understand how it operates, really. I often say to candidates who are looking to move into the sector that perhaps don't have the operational experience, that it's always good to sit on the other side as a trustee, to get an understanding of the inner workings of a charitable organisation.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, great advice.
Well, Melissa, thank you so much for joining us and sharing such an honest and inspiring story. We're so positive. It's such a brilliant example of what happens when passion, creativity and community come together. And I think that your message will resonate with so many of our listeners. If you'd like to find out more about So Positive, or indeed read the Charity Times article Melissa's contributed to, check out the links in the episode notes. And if you're enjoying Charity Champions, do subscribe, rate and share with others. There's lots more of inspiring guests coming up very soon. So until next time, thanks for listening.